Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The press conference of the 5th session of the 12th National Committee of the CPPCC now begins. On behalf of the Secretariat of this session, I would like to welcome you, friends from the Chinese and foreign media. Today's press conference will last about 70 minutes. Mr. Wang Guoqing, spokesperson of the session, will first give an introduction about the main agenda of this session, and then answer your questions. Ladies and gentlemen, friends from the media, welcome you all to today's press conference. Today, last year, we held a press conference in this same room. Today, you can see that this room has been refurbished. Its interior may appear slightly different, but I can see in this room both old and new friends. So first of all, I want to thank you for your interest in the CPPCC's work and our press conference. Thank you also for the efforts you have made and will make to create a favorable atmosphere for this year's NPC and CPPCC sessions. Before answering your questions, I am entrusted by the Secretariat of the 5th session of the 12th CPPCC National Committee to brief you on the agenda and main arrangements of this session. This annual session will open at 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon at the Great Hall of the People and close on the morning of the 13th of March. The main agenda of this session includes to hear and deliberate on the work report of the Standing Committee of the CPPCC National Committee and its report on proposal-related work, to deliberate on and adopt resolutions and reports including the political resolution of the 5th session of the 12th CPPCC, to observe the 5th session of the 12th NPC, to hear and discuss the work reports of the government, the Supreme People's Court, and the Supreme People's Procuratorate, and other important reports, and discuss the draft general provisions of the civil law. During the session, there will be 3 plenary meetings, 11 group and joint group discussions, and 3 press conferences on the Chinese economy, people's livelihood, and culture. There will be 1 consultative meeting on proposal handling under the theme of raising farmers' income. All preparations of the session have now been completed. The opening, closing, and 3 plenary meetings will be open to Chinese and foreign media. Information about media access to group and joint group discussions will be released on the CPPCC website in advance. You may also find on the website some of the key proposals. And now, I am ready to answer your questions related to this session. Let me stress that questions are expected to be related to this session, as I am the spokesperson of the session of the CPPCC National Committee. Now the floor is open. Before asking the question, please first identify your media outlet. For the interest of time, please ask only 1 question at a time.
谢谢主持人。发言人您好，我是人民日报记者。我们知道，在去年的全国政协大会上，俞正声主席提到，2016年人民政协要把围绕“十三五”规划实施建言献策作为工作的主线，为“十三五”的良好开局做出贡献。 那么我们想请问一下，这一年来我们为“十三五”，我们是怎么具体落实“十三五”的规划的？谢谢。
People's Daily. At last year's session, Chairman Yu Zhengsheng said that the CPPCC should focus on contributing ideas on the implementation of the 13th five-year plan to help ensure a good start for the new five-year period. What specifically has the CPPCC done over the past year in this area? Thank you.
谢谢你的提问。
Thank you for your question. 2016 has kicked off the implementation of the 13th five-year plan. It also marks the beginning of the crucial stage for implementing the building of a moderately prosperous society in all respects. The CPPCC has continued to uphold and promote socialism with Chinese characteristics as a pivot point for consolidating our shared political foundation. In making suggestions, the CPPCC has focused on the implementation of the 13th five-year plan, the completion of building a moderately prosperous society, including its main tasks, difficulties, and challenging issues. We have carried out inspections and discussions to make good suggestions. Last year, the CPPCC National Committee conducted 91 inspections involving over 1,400 members. We convened 2 consultative standing committee meetings, 3 thematic consultations, and 16 bi-weekly consultative meetings. Altogether, over 5,700 proposals have been submitted, and the National Committee has received over 8,600 messages and letters reflecting public opinions. On topics of poverty reduction, industrial upgrading in northeastern China, healthcare reform, we have conducted inspections, studies, and discussions, and our work has been fruitful. The CPPCC, as a major channel for socialist consultative democracy, has worked hard throughout last year to conduct inspections, consultations, and democratic oversight. We have contributed our share to the successful beginning of the implementation of the 13th five-year plan. Thank you.
请北区第2排第1位这位女士。
谢谢主持人，我是经济日报中国经济网的记者。国家统计局已经公布，中国2016年的 GDP 增速为6.7%，可能很多人已经注意到了，这是26年来的新低。有机构预测呢，2017年中国 GDP 的增速为6.5%。据我们了解，咱们全国政协呢每年要召开多次的宏观经济形势分析会，所以说我们想请问发言人，政协委员对2017年中国的经济走势有何判断？谢谢。
Economic Daily. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, China's GDP grew by 6.7% in 2016, the lowest in 26 years. Some institution put its forecast of China's GDP growth in 2017 at 6.5%. As we know, the CPPCC has meetings each year to discuss macroeconomic situation. How do you see China's economy this year?
有关我国经济的问题是必答题。
A question on the Chinese economy is almost a must-asked question each year. Well, I had preparations on this question. In the context of weak global economic recovery, as you can see, released by the People's Daily, China's GDP last year exceeded 70 trillion yuan, up by 6.7% against the previous year, and once again, the highest among the world's major economies. We got the 13th five-year plan period off to a good start and responded pessimism in the Chinese economy with solid achievements. Over the past year, under the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at the core, we have met challenges head-on and deepened reform across the board. We followed a new development philosophy focused on supply-side structural reform and ensured a medium-high growth rate and medium-high level of development. You can see from the figures that the quality and efficiency of economic development were further improved. And as the world's second largest economy, the Chinese economy in 2016 contributed to 33.2% of world economic growth. With steady economic growth, China has generated more market demand for the world economy and more investment, and offered more products and more valuable opportunities of cooperation. Now, the Chinese economy on the whole is on an upward trajectory with steady performance, and we need to continue our efforts to make solid progress. In January, the Economic Affairs Committee of the CPPCC National Committee convened a meeting on macroeconomy, and many members shared the view that the fundamentals, the basic features, and supporting basis, sustaining sound economic growth in the long run, and the upward momentum remain unchanged. Various work with supply-side structural reform as the central task is progressing steadily, and reform dividends are unleashing. The Chinese economy still enjoys strong impetus and staying power. As long as we make progress while maintaining stability, address various risks and challenges calmly, and roll up our sleeves to work harder as called upon by General Secretary Xi, we have every confidence that in the new year, the Chinese economy will remain the most powerful engine driving the world economy. I'm no expert on the economy, but I can tell you that on May the 6th, the Media Center will hold a press conference on economy right here. And you are more than welcome to cover that event for more authoritative information. Thank you.
请中区第二排的第一位那位女士。
谢谢主持人。发言人您好，我是中国日报和中国日报网记者。我们注意到，去年以来，全国和地方政协就如何推进精准扶贫和精准脱贫做了大量的工作。请问今年会有哪些后续的安排？谢谢。
China Daily. We've noticed that over the past year, CPPCC committees at all levels have made tremendous efforts in advancing targeted poverty alleviation. What are you going to do this year?
首先，我在这里还要感谢媒体。最近我在媒体上媒体的报道上看到很多有关这个扶贫方面的报道。
noted many reports on poverty alleviation. They were very lively,
全国政协和各地政协
and they have reflected the work that have been done by CPPCC committees at various levels. I believe you are also doing your part for poverty alleviation, so I want to thank you all. In 2016, CPPCC committees at various levels has done a great deal of productive work in targeted poverty alleviation, and there are many highlights in this. I'd like to give you an example. Last May, a thematic studying group of the CPPCC National Committee spent 8 days in Yan'an. They visited local people in cave dwellings and in the fields and did analysis into the success experience of the industrial poverty alleviation in Yan'an. Actually, the story dates back to 1947. Back then, Luochuan County of Yan'an, in northern Shanxi on the Loess Plateau, was known for its poverty. You can just imagine how little people could earn from grain growing on the Loess. Li Xing'an, a local farmer, wanted to have a change and introduced apple saplings from Henan and began to grow apples in Luochuan. After he introduced apple saplings, he was mocked by other locals because they didn't believe these apple saplings will deliver wealth. But Li Xing'an didn't give up. In 1957, Li Xing'an had grown apples for 10 years, and he attended the first National Agricultural Exposition and was met by Chairman Mao Zedong on that exposition. And since then, he has begun to send apples to the central leadership. After tasting the apples, Chairman Mao and other leaders asked the General Office of the CPC Central Committee to convey their commendation of the apples in a letter as a pioneering achievement on the Loess Plateau. So over 50 years on, this pioneering achievement has turned into a money tree for farmers of northern Shanxi. Now in Shanxi province, a big apple industry has been developed, which has lifted a great number of people out of poverty, as it supports over 10 million jobs and derives the experience of eliminating poverty by building apple orchards. Members who participated in the inspective study shared Shanxi's success experience in a thematic consultative meeting of the Standing Committee, and their experience has attracted a lot of attention. Of course, topics discussed at the plenary session speeches and group discussions are much more than this. To understand things on the ground, identify problems, and come up with right proposals, members of the study group traveled long distance over mountains and into local villages. They visited Yunnan, Guizhou, Guangxi, Xinjiang, Chongqing, and 11 other provinces, autonomous regions, and cities. They carried out study on accelerating targeted efforts on poverty alleviation, relocation of the poor population in contiguous poor areas, strengthening poverty alleviation through development of education, science and technology, culture and health, and 3 other topics. Members were good at finding problems and never hesitated to point out them and inquire into their root causes. Some members were very serious about their study and would get to the bottom if they detect any statistical inconsistency, even a minor one. And because of this spirit, they were able to delineate the real situation there and draw attention to the problems and success experience, making the meeting a down-to-earth and a very efficient one. In 2017, the CPPCC National Committee will organize inspections with supervision purposes on the implementation of the major strategy of poverty alleviation. And also, we have made arrangements on the implementation of this major strategy. On the basis of their study, they will convene a thematic consultative meeting on the problems and suggestions for targeted poverty alleviation. I'd like to say that a topic has been selected for the thematic consultative conference of 2 consecutive years. It is rare. Therefore, their efforts have ensured that all policy measures will be well implemented. and to do everything possible to alleviate another 10 million people out of poverty this year. Thank you.
谢谢主持人，我是中央人民广播电台央广网和央广新闻科普端的记者。最近的中央反复强调稳中求进的总基调，请问强调稳是否意味着深化改革的步伐会放缓？会不会为了稳增长而放慢改革、放缓调结构的步伐？谢谢。
With China National Radio, recently the central government has repeatedly emphasized the priority of making progress amid stability. Does stability indicate slowdown of reform and structural readjustment?
强调稳，是不是要放缓改革的步
stress
伐？
of stability, does this
那
mean
么，我想我
slowing
们
down
这
the
个几
pace
十年的
of
实践证
reform?
明啊，
Well, I
稳中
believe
求进，
through
这
decades
是
of
工作
practices,
总基调啊，
we have
是
seen
我们治国理
that
政的重要
seeking
原则，
progress while
也是
maintaining
改革开
stability
放的重
is
要
an
的方法
important
论。
governance principle and
因
an
为当今
important approach to
复
reform
杂多变的
and
国际国内环
development.
境，
The world we live
大家都
in
说现在我们
is complex
乱。
and fluid.
那么我想可能这个
Many
用
people
几
say
句
that
话可
we
以做一
face
下
chaos in
做
this
一个简单的
world.
概括。
Indeed, the world is
世界正
undergoing
处于百年
profound
不遇的大
changes,
变局之中，不稳定性、
and
不
these
确定性出现，
changes have resulted in increased uncertainty and instability.
感觉到这么
The
一点。
international environment
我们
is
国内
getting
呢，
more complex.
改革进入了深水区
Domestic
和
reform
攻坚期，
is in the deep
所以也
water
是多
zone
种矛盾
where
叠加，
there are
各种
difficult
风险
issues, multiple
会交汇。
challenges, and
所以在
intertwined
这样的大背
risks.
景下，我们强
Against
调稳
such
中求进，
background, we've been
其实稳
seeking
是基
progress
础，
while
是主基调。
maintaining stability. Stability
是在
is the
稳的前
basis,
提下我
the
们
main
求进。
theme, and the
进是
prerequisite,
目的，
while
是大
progress
事。
is
进是
the
目的，是大
purpose
事，肯定要
and
往前走。
the overall direction.
所以我们强调稳中求进啊，
Making
不是
progress
无所作
while
为，
maintaining
不敢
stability doesn't mean
而是要
inaction
在
or
重要领域和
non-action.
关键
It
环
means
节，还要
pressing
有所
ahead
进取，
in a steady way.
以
We
进
will strive for
来促稳。
progress in key areas and
那么大
links
家可
to
能也都
enhance
注意到，就
stability.
今年2月初，
In the
中
beginning
央
of
全面
this
深化改
February,
革领导
the
小组
Central
第
Committee
32 次
Leading
会议
Group for
发出了一个
comprehensively
强烈的
deepening
信号，
reform
我以为这是个强烈的
has
信号，
sent a strong
要把
message
改革
at its
放在更加突
32nd
出的位置，
meeting about
不是一
giving
般的位置，而
higher
是更加突出的
priority
位置，
to reform,
而且要求我们要
and
扑下身子，
making
要
more
狠抓落实。
concrete efforts
因
to
此啊，我
deepen
们说
reform.
中国的改革，
Therefore,
只有
China's
进行时，
deepening of
没有
reform
完成时。
is an
所
ongoing
以中国
process.
全面深化改革
Our
的步
pace
伐，
will
大家
not
可以放心，不
slow
会放缓，
down,
而是将会
but will
走得
only
更加
be
稳健。谢谢。
even steadier. Thank you.
请中区第3排中间这位女士提问。
谢谢主持人。欢迎人，下午好，我是香港商报的记者。我们比较关注即将举行的香港特首选举，因为昨天刚刚截止了提名，我们想请问中央对几位候选人有何评价？还有一个香港人都比较关注的，我们想知道中央是不是已经有了意向的人选？谢谢。
With Hong Kong Commercial Daily, we pay a lot of attention to chief executive election to be held in Hong Kong. And yesterday we saw the nomination. We want to know that what comments you have on the candidates, and do you have anybody in mind already?
香港的第5任行政长官
The
选举将在
fifth chief executive
20多天以
of
后吧
Hong
3月
Kong
26号
will be
要再举行。
elected
所以我们
on March
这
the
个希望啊，这
26th.
个选举能够
We
依法
hope the election will
有序
be law-based,
顺利的进行。
orderly, and
当然，我们也
smooth.
相信香港
And
一
we
定能
believe
选出一位
that there will be
爱国爱
a
港、
new chief executive
中央
who loves the
信
country
任、
and loves Hong Kong, who
有
has the
管制
trust
能
of the
力
central government, who is
还有港
capable
人拥
of
护
governing, and who
这
is
个行
supported
政长官的
by
人选。
the Hong Kong people.
我跟
And like you, we are also following that. Thank you.
请中区第二排第3位这位男士。
Thank you. 我是美国全国广播公司记者，美国电视网 NBC. Thank you. Minister Wang Guoqing, there have been many reports supported by photographs that China has installed military-related structures on disputed reclaimed islands in the South China Sea. And many critics say this is militarization that poses serious threat to freedom of navigation. But China declared it will observe the freedom of navigation. But given this situation, how can you say China can protect or guarantee freedom of navigation? Thank you.
我是美国全国广播公司的记者，发言人您好。有报道称，中国在南海岛礁部署了军事设施，并有照片为证。不少批评人士说，这是军事化，严重威胁航行自由。中国始终表示尊重航行自由。然而，在当前的形势下，请问中国如何能确保航行自由？谢谢。
谢谢 Eric。
Thank you, Eric.
你这个问题，我想我们外交部、我们国防部的发言人，
I think your question
讲过多次
has been addressed by the spokespersons of the Foreign Ministry and Defense Ministry.
在这个方面，我也得表
Since
示
you
一下
have
态度。
raised this question,
南
I'd
海
like
诸
to
岛是中国的固有领土。
The South China Sea
那
Islands
么我
have
们
been
在
China's
自
inherent
己的国土
territory.
上建一些设施，
It is absolutely normal that we conduct construction on our own territory and deploy necessary facilities
这
to
是国
defend
际
it,
法承认的
as
一个
this
主
is
权
a
国家的
right
正常
of a
权利。
sovereign state recognized by the international
至
law.
于受到威胁其他国
As
家
for
的航
posing a
行
threat
自
to
由，
other countries' freedom of
中
navigation,
国有一句老
I
话
like to quote an old Chinese saying,
天下本
though
无事，
peace reigns over the
庸
land,
人
unwise
自扰
people
之
worry
扰
about
之。
troubles of their own imagining.
其实中国作为世界上
As the world's
主要的贸易国
biggest trader
和最大的
and
南
the
海沿岸国，
largest littoral state of the South China
我们
Sea,
比任何国家都要重视
China
南
places
海
greater
的航行
importance
自
on the
由和
freedom
安全。
and safety of navigation there than any
所以
other
个别域
country.
外国家炒作中国航行、
The
中
argument that some
国
outside
威胁航
countries
行自由
hype up
的
about
说
China
法，
threatening
我
freedom
觉
of
得这完
navigation
全是
there
个伪命题。
is
为
totally
什么这么说呢？
untenable
因为从二战
because
结束后，中国收复
since
了南
China
海诸岛
recovered
以
the South China Sea Islands after
那么
World
多
War
年
II,
了，南海航行自由从
there has
来没
been
听说过有
no
什么
problem
有什么问题。
about freedom of navigation in the South China Sea at all for
那
so
么这
many
点我们要
years.
重申的是，中国坚决
I'd like
维
to
护各
reiterate
国
that
依
China
国
firmly
际法
safeguards
在
the
南海
freedom
享
of
有的航行
navigation enjoyed by various countries
已经
in the
会
South
同
China
我们
Sea
已经
according
会
to
同多个
law.
国家
And
建立了合作机制，
we have
以
established
保
cooperation
证南
mechanisms
海
with
航
many
道的
countries
航行安
to
全。
ensure the safety of shipping
中
lanes
国
there.
在南海诸岛
The
建立的灯塔等民用设施，
civil facilities China
在
built up in the South
保
China
证
Sea Islands,
船舶航行
like
安全
lighthouses,
和人道主
are
义
very
救援方面，
useful in ensuring
还
safety
起
of
到了积极的作用。
navigation and providing humanitarian
我想也许
rescue and relief.
我把该说的都说全了。
I think
谢
I
谢
have said what I need to say. Thank you.
请咱们西区的第二排第一位记者提问。第二排第一位，
发言人您好，我是新华社记者。去年，习近平总书记在看望参加政协联组会议的民建工商联界别的委员时，用“亲亲”2字定调了新型的政商关系。请问，1年过去了，这方面有什么进展？谢谢。
Xinhua News Agency. Last year, when meeting CPPCC members from China National Democratic Construction Association and the Federation of Industry and Commerce, General Secretary Xi Jinping noted that there should be a new type of relationship between government and business, which is close and clean. What progress has been made over the past year in this area?
谢谢你的这个问题。这个
Thank you for your
这是
question.
去年
Last year, General Secretary Xi Jinping pointed out this relationship during his meeting with the CPPCC session. And indeed, our members have been following the changes in this regard. We know that without business, the people will lose their vitality and the state cannot thrive. Therefore, interactions between the government and the businesses are only natural. Then, in the context of the new normal of the economy and the policy of strengthening party discipline, what kind of government-businesses relationship needs to be built? General Secretary Xi Jinping pointed out last year that we need to build a new type relationship between the government and the businesses featuring closeness and cleanness. The first word is closeness, and the second word is cleanness. The Chinese pronunciation of these two words is a little bit difficult, so I need to explain a little bit. The interpreter has been very clearly inputting it. Close and clean, very clear. These two words are very pertinent and incisive. They have provided important methodologies for party and government officials at various levels to delimit ethical boundaries and uphold honesty, and charted the course for the healthy development of the private sector and the entrepreneurs in it. 1 year has passed. What is the situation on the ground? Actually, we have read many materials in this regard, and we have noted many media reports. I think there are many gratifying new signs in this area. The government and the businesses have got a new mindset. And developed a higher recognition of the importance of closeness and cleanness. These two words have gradually become common values supported by both sides. The second change, there are rules to follow. Many local governments have formulated regulations in this area. We have seen that at least 7 provinces have introduced regulations in this area. Some have even adopted lists of powers and responsibilities as well as negative lists. So bounds have been set as to what can be done and what cannot. So the style of work has changed, with rules to follow and bounds to bear in mind. Governments and officials are also changing their style of work, and they have begun to take the initiative in providing services. And I have read many media reports. One report was about a government official in the taxation department who has made the initiative to provide services for enterprises. And more importantly, corporate integrity has been highlighted. More and more entrepreneurs now believe in the importance of the market, science and technology, innovation, management, and the genuine entrepreneurship for the success of their enterprises, instead of connections or bad money drives out good. Of course, while delighting in such changes, we should also be aware of some serious problems. For example, cleanness overshadows closeness. They're clean, but they're not close enough. Some senior officials tend to keep entrepreneurs at arm's length and fail to fulfill their due responsibilities for fear of overstepping the mark. Therefore, we must know clearly that as long as we are still a socialist market economy, the efforts to build a healthy relationship between the government and the businesses will never end. Such efforts will always continue. The CPPCC National Committee will make unremitting efforts to do its part in this process. We have arranged a thematic consultative meeting on building a new type of close and clean relationship between the government and the businesses and promote healthy development of the private sector. Please pay attention and make more courage. Thank you.
请北区第一排第2位那位女士。
谢谢，发言人好。那我是新加坡联合早报的记者。我们知道中国的一带一路倡议是在用钱买影响力。请问一带一路倡议至今都取得了哪些成就或进展？一带一路倡议是否提升了中国在全球的影响力？谢谢。
联合早报 of Singapore, some say that China is buying influence with its Belt and Road Initiative. I want to know what has been achieved so far. Has it truly boosted China's global influence?
谢谢你的提问。一带一路呢
Well, thank you for your question. The Belt and Road Initiative is a historic project with global relevance. It is an international undertaking involving many countries, not just one or two countries. As President Xi Jinping has pointed out, the Belt and Road Initiative comes from China, but can benefit the whole world. Since 2013, when the initiative was first proposed, the Belt and Road have been making good progress through cooperation. And now its circle of friends is growing bigger and bigger. With over 100 countries and international organizations joining in, and over 40 countries and international organizations having signed cooperation agreements with China. So far, in 20 countries along the routes, 56 economic cooperation zones have been set up. They serve as platforms of international cooperation on production capacity and equipment manufacturing, supporting more Chinese companies going global, with total investment over $18 billion. These cooperation zones have also delivered benefits to the host countries. For instance, over $1 billion of tax revenue and over 160,000 jobs for the hosting countries. In 2016 alone, China's direct investment in the 53 countries along the routes of the Belt and Road reached $14.53 billion. New contracts between Chinese companies and companies in the related countries, 61 countries, totaled $126.03 billion. So you can actually see that many of the contracts have been implemented. The turnover accounted for 47.7% of the total last year. And these include highway, railway, and other infrastructure projects in Pakistan, Turkey, Hungary, and other countries. These projects contributed to the improvement of local infrastructure and economy. Facts have proved that the Belt and Road Initiative will live up to the principle of planning, building, and benefiting together, and will contribute to the building of a community of shared future for mankind, featuring common development and common prosperity. I also want to say that in the recent years, the CPPCC National Committee members and special committees have been following the building of the Belt and Road closely. We have done many inspections at home and abroad. We have contributed many good ideas and suggestions. As a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the CPPCC National Committee, I myself have also participated in the committee's many studies on the cultural connectivity and people-to-people exchange between China and countries along the Belt and Road. We will have an inspection this year and studies also this year to enhance cultural connectivity between China and countries along the Belt and Road. We believe that through our inspections and efforts, we will make even better and more suggestions. Thank you.
来，请中区第一排，这位男士，第二个。
谢谢主持人。发言人您好，我是光明日报客户端光明网的记者。习近平总书记在建党95周年纪念大会上讲话中指出，文化自信是更基础、更广泛、更深厚的自信。想请发言人介绍一下，就这些委员在提振文化自信方面都能做些什么工作？谢谢。
Guangming Daily. On the occasion of the 95th anniversary of the CPC, General Secretary Xi Jinping said that culture confidence is a type of confidence that is more fundamental, extensive, and profound. What can CPPCC do to boost culture confidence?
3000多年前
Over 3,000 years ago,
大跨越，跨到3000。
so that was a long time ago,
我们的祖先就说过，
our ancestors
关
said
乎人文，
the
化成天下。
supreme virtue of humanity should be universally applied.
源远流长。
The Chinese culture is extensive and time-honored, and our culture confidence is rooted in the profound heritage. During the Spring Festival this year, a TV program was a really big hit. It is the Chinese poetry competition. The audience rating was quite impressive. The 10 editions have an accumulated viewership of 1.1 billion. I'm not advertising for it. It is indeed very popular. I don't know whether you also like this program. And I myself, during the Spring Festival holiday, watched it for several days in a row. And my grandson, who is in second grade, was also quite enthusiastic in answering those questions with what he had learned in class. And you can read from the media reports that the show, the TV program, was popular among all kinds of people. And among the contestants, there are people in their 70s. There are also pupils. There are workers and farmers, and also people with master degrees and PhD. There are Chinese, and there are also foreigners who I truly admire because they have a greater master of Chinese poetry than I do. As well, often say, reading and knowledge mellows one's temperament. And we can see the contestants, they all have this yearning for faraway places and a poetic life, and their love for classic Chinese poetry is indeed moving. The competition was popular because it showcases the vast reserve and age-old nourishment of the Chinese poetry. And more broadly, the profound Chinese culture that has its roots in ordinary people. It also testifies to General Secretary Xi's important remark that culture confidence is a more fundamental, extensive, and profound type of confidence. The CPPCC Charter stipulates that CPPCC shall, through all possible forms, actively disseminate advanced culture, carry forward, and cultivate the national spirit. CPPCC committees at all levels lay great emphasis on culture confidence and carrying forward Chinese culture. Last year, the CPPCC National Committee conducted 91 inspection and research activities, and at least 21 of them were related to culture and art.
至少有20亿项，你看90亿项里面有20亿
So you
项，
can see the
可见这方面很
percentage
重视。
is pretty high,
8月
and we
份
attach
还
great
召开了以
importance
文艺
to
繁
this
荣为主题
topic.
的议政性常
And
委会。
in August last
今年
year, a
全国政协
thematic
已经安
standing
排围绕
committee
坚
meeting
持
on
文化自
developing
信，
culture
讲
and
好
art
中国
was
故事，
convened.
展
This
开
year, we also
调
have
研，
plans to
还
research
要召
and
开
study on
专题协
boosting
商会。
culture confidence
在
and
这方面，
presenting
我们
China's
这
story.
个政协委
We'll
员当
also
中有
convene
很多
thematic
从
consultative
文化界、
meeting.
文艺界
We
的，
have many
在这方面
members
他们
from the
做的工作
cultural
就更
and
多了。
art
我因为时间关系，
community.
我就不在
So
这儿
in the interest
一
of
一介
time,
绍。
I will
最近
not
媒体
spell
上
out
有
their
有
efforts.
很多这方
There
面
are
的报
also
道，
a lot
如果
of
大家
media
关心的话，大家
reports.
可以从这方
You
去
can
找很多
refer
生动的故
to
事。谢谢大
those
家。
reports. Thank you.
请中区第3排中间那位女士，穿黑衣服的那位女士。
谢谢主持人，发言人您好，我是中央电视台、央视网以及央视新闻移动网的记者。去年12月，国家税务总局是公布的数据显示，2016年营改增减税呢大约是5000亿人民币。但是我们也是听到有些企业反映说，这个获得感并不是非常的明显。那政协委员当中有不少人都是来自企业的，据您的了解，他们的真实感受是什么？谢谢。
With CCTV. The statistics of last December released by the State Administration of Taxation shows that thanks to VAT reform, tax was cut by about 500 billion yuan in 2016. But we have heard companies saying they haven't felt much difference. Some CPPCC members are from the business community. How do they feel about it?
关于中国企业的税负问题，最近确实
There's
议论也比较多。
indeed a lot of discussion on companies' tax burden in China
特别是
recently.
去年
Last year,
作为
thanks
国家税制改革的
to
重要的
VAT reform,
推行营改增试点。当年
which is an important reform measure of the taxation system, there was a total tax cut of over 500 billion
但是我们也注意
yuan.
到，有一些企业家，包括我们一些媒体上也有一些报道，说那个企业感觉负担
Indeed, the
还是重。
businesses don't feel much difference,
那么
as you
中
can
国
see
企
in media
业
reports.
的税负情况到
So,
底怎么
what
样？
is the level of companies'
怎么
tax
才
burden
能
in
让
China?
大家感觉到
How
确实
can we
不像那么压力那么大，
lower
负担那么重？
the burdens
我带着这些问题，
for the
因为在这方面
companies? Well,
我可能跟在座有很多记者也一样。
like many of you, I'm no expert on this
所以我
issue,
请教过
so
有
I
关部门
got
的同志，
some of the answer from relevant government agencies
同时
in
也
charge
请教
of
了一些来自企业的
taxation and also CPPCC members from the business
这
community.
个企业税负的高低，
Tax burden, according to them, for companies
和
can
企
be
业的主要
assessed
税
by
税率
debt to
两个维
GDP
度
ratio and main tax categories
有
and
权
tax
威
rates.
统计数
And
据
according to authoritative
我国企业
figures,
在这两方面的
by
税负水
either one of the
在
standards,
世界上
companies' tax
大部分
burden in
国家
China is
当中都属于中等
at the
或偏低。
medium or lower end worldwide.
由于时间关系呢，我在这里
In
面
the
有一些数
interest
据
of
我就把它略了。
time, I will not
其实
quote
在这
the
方面
figures
大家
here,
网上一查都
and
能
you
查到。
can all look it up
所以
on
有
the
的专家
internet.
也认为，因为中国我们
Some experts say that China's tax system is dominated by indirect
所以
tax.
企业
So
对税费
the
的
companies
痛感，一个词叫痛
are
感，
more
特别敏锐。
sensitive
稍微有
to
一点大家就知
tax
道。
changes, to the minute
另外
changes
当然
in
还有一个
taxation.
重要的问题了，大家都在说的，除了税
And
还有
also,
费。
there are various kinds
加
of
上各种不合理
charges
收费转嫁到企业上，
levied on
企业感
companies,
到的实
so
际负担
they feel
这个就重。
a heavier burden.
但我们要说，去年营改增
It's true
减税5000
that
亿，
last year
这是一个实实在在的
VAT reform cut tax by a total of 500 billion yuan.
我再说是少收上来。但是
That
具
was
体到每
the
个
actual tax cut.
获得感
But
肯定
when
会
it
有
comes
差异
to individual companies, it's natural that their sense
因
of
为
benefit
增值税
varies.
特殊的
The
扣机制
special
它是
deduction
特殊的
system
这种抵扣机制
of
所以对
VAT
纳税人的会计核算和纳税管
has
理要求就更
a
高。
higher requirement on accounting and tax management of the corporate
另外一方
taxpayers.
面呢，受投
And
资
due
周期
to investment cycle, asset composition, management, profitability, and many other factors. The tax burden of a particular taxpayer may fluctuate from time to time. It's not necessarily a steady decline for every corporate taxpayer. And things are also different from industry to industry. So, while on the whole, there was tax cut with VAT reform, about 1.6% of the companies actually have a higher tax burden. That's why some experts say that VAT reform, as a reform measure of the tax system, and some foreign experts say it is a very successful tax reform measure. And this kind of tax measure, it is successful, but it is not the same as direct tax cut or tax waiver. In light of the changes, taxpayers also need to improve and strengthen their internal management so as to benefit as much as possible from this policy dividend. So there's work to do on the part of companies. The Central Economic Work Conference at the end of last year called for greater efforts in lowering tax charges and the cost of factors in 2017. The VAT reform will generate more tax cuts. The State Council executive meeting not long ago also decided to further regulate charges on companies. So with these dual-track measures, the tax burden on companies will be lowered. The CPPCC National Committee this year will carry out supervision and consultative activities on the implementation of VAT reform. We need to advance the oversight of the implementation because problems might arise in the process of the implementation. On the CPPCC platform, we will contribute our ideas and suggestions to ensure its good implementation to lower burdens for companies. Thank you.
我们请西区第3排的第2位记者提问。
感谢主持人。发言人您好，香港大公文汇传媒集团记者提问。今年是香港回归20周年，但是近年来呢，一国两制在香港的实践也遇到了一些新情况和新问题。为此呢，有人对一国两制能否确保香港持续的繁荣和稳定产生了疑问。因此，我们想请发言人评价一下，这20年来一国两制在香港的实践情况，并且对它的前景做一个展望。谢谢。
Takong Wenhuipo of Hong Kong. This year marks the 20th anniversary of Hong Kong's return. In recent years, there have been some new developments in the practice of one country, two systems, calling into question its ability to ensure sustained prosperity and stability in Hong Kong. How do you comment on the practice and prospects of one country, two systems in Hong Kong?
香港回归 将近20年了，到今年7月1号就20年。
Well, it's been about 20 years since Hong Kong returned to the motherland. Over the past 20 years, under the one country, two systems, Hong Kong has achieved remarkable progress, and that has been recognized by the whole world. while it is also natural that some new circumstances and questions may emerge, to uphold our country's sovereignty, security, and development interests, and maintain long-term prosperity and stability of Hong Kong, these are the fundamental purposes of the one country, two systems. The central government upholds two principles in the practice of the one country, two systems. First, it is firmly committed to this policy. It has never wavered and will not waver on such commitment. Second, the central government has been working to ensure all-round and faithful implementation of this policy, making sure that the actual practice of this policy in Hong Kong does not deviate from the right track and keeps to the right direction. For people in the mainland and Hong Kong, and for all social sectors in Hong Kong, it's important to fully respect each other's interests and concerns, stay sensible and pragmatic, show differences while seeking common ground. While in this way, can differences be narrowed and issues be resolved? That will enable us to enhance development of both Hong Kong and the mainland, and jointly write a new chapter of the successful implementation of the one country, two systems.
第二排第3位记者提问。
发言人您好，我是中国国际广播电台国际在线的记者。我想问发言人一个关于振兴东北的问题。在去年的这个新闻发布会上，有记者也问到了振兴东北老工业基地的问题。我记得您当时也说，政协会组织这个深入的调研，召开专题的研讨会。那1年过去了，人们对于这个问题还是非常的关心。我想问，在今年的政协会议上，政协委员对于振兴东北有哪些好的建议？谢谢。
China Radio International. My question is about Northeast China. At last year's press conference, when asked about old industrial bases in Northeast China, you told us that the CPPCC would carry out research and study on this issue. Today, people are still concerned. Could you please tell us what CPPCC has done in the past year to help revitalize Northeast China?
振兴东北啊，是 这个全国老工业基地，振兴
to
东北老工业基
revitalize
地，这是
northeastern China
去年我们这个专题协商的重
is
点议题。
one of the key topics of the thematic consultative meetings of the CPPCC National Committee in 2016. At last year's press conference, I announced our working plans to you in advance, and today I'd like to say a few more words to let you know what we have done and achieved. First, I'd like to say that the leadership of the CPPCC National Committee has attached great importance to this issue. Chairman Yu Zhengsheng heard reports on inspective tours for many times, and he himself made field trips to Changchun and Yanbian of Jilin Province. Second, large-scale inspective tours were organized. Since last year's plenary session, 3 vice chairpersons, over 100 members, and representatives from other departments formed 16 groups. They visited 87 enterprises in 22 cities of Heilongjiang, Jilin, and Liaoning. There they held 57 meetings, conducting studies on such key issues on the revitalization of northeastern China, and solicited opinions from workers, company managers, experts, scholars, and officials. Third, substantive studies were carried out. Their studies have been problems-oriented and focused on analyzing those problems to get to their bottom. The studies in many enterprises took over 1 day and a half. You know that our life and work have all picked up pace. Actually, I have participated in some inspection organized by the Foreign Affairs Committee. Some inspective tours won't need even a day in one city, but they spent more than 1 day in just one enterprise. So you can tell they have done a lot in the studies. On the basis of in-depth and detailed studies, 23 quality reports have been produced, and a thematic consultative meeting was convened on the industrial transformation and upgrading of 3 northeastern provinces. In the reports and the remarks at the meeting, the CPPCC members raised many down-to-earth measures on deepening SOE reform, and the propositions have been praised by the central leadership, and the problems they pointed out received written responses from competent departments of the State Council. Judging from last year's inspective tours, the tasks of revitalizing northeastern China remain arduous. The CPPCC will surely leverage its advantage of being a galaxy of talents and keep offering practical solutions for revitalizing northeastern China. I wish to point out here that this undertaking requires strong policy support and firm confidence. The economic structure of the three provinces is adjusting, and signs of steady and upward economic performance have shown. So we should have firm confidence. Northeastern China has an irreplaceable position and a promising future. We believe Northeastern China will surely get revitalized. Thank you.
请北区第3排第1位这位举手的男士。
谢谢主持人，我是南方都市报的记者。发言人，您刚刚提到了就是双周协商座谈会，我们也注意到双周协商座谈会重启以来已经开了有62次了。那我们也注意到，就是其中一些会议的主题，选得很小、很实在，跟老百姓的生活也是很息息相关的。那请问发言人，就是这些议题到底是怎么选出来的？双周协商座谈会又是如何能够影响到国家的决策的？谢谢。
With Southern Metropolis Daily, you mentioned bi-weekly consultative meetings. We've noticed that ever since it was reinstated, 62 such meetings have been held, focusing on specific and concrete topics that concern people's lives. How the topics are decided, and in what way does this influence the country's decision-making? Thank you.
Thank you. Bi-weekly consultative meeting is indeed a big highlight of this CPPCC, and I mentioned it a lot in my previous remarks. The leadership of our CPPCC has stressed for many times that each meeting only lasts 3 hours, so it cannot be for a vague and general topic that actually deals with no real problems. It must select a specific topic with a broad vision and addresses major issues on economic and social development and practical problems concerning people's immediate interests. By focusing on a small issue which bears on the whole picture, the meeting needs to carry out in-depth study and consultation and arrive at effective solutions to the issue in question. Therefore, the selection of topics is very important. At the end of every year, the Central Committees of Non-Communist Parties, or China Federation of Industry and Commerce, and Special Committees of CPPCC National Committee will recommend topics for the next year based on full consultation. And with coordination of the General Office of the CPPCC National Committee, evaluation of the chairman's meeting, and then approval of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee, the topics will be decided on and selected. The bi-weekly consultative meeting is not a decision-making mechanism, but a consultation platform. It is very important for providing counsel for the decision-making of the CPC Central Committee, the State Council, and other departments. Prior to each meeting, CPPCC members will do a great deal of study on the topic. At the meeting, CPPCC members, experts, scholars, and officials will voice their views on this topic. They will have clash of thoughts and also very candid exchange of opinions. Such consultation will lead to a solution to the issue in question. After the meeting, the important outcomes of the consultation will be reported to relevant departments in written form. Actually, there are many examples of how such meetings affect the decision-making of the state. In the interest of time, I will just give you a few examples, 2 examples. The guiding opinions on deepening the reform of urban law enforcement system and improving urban management adopted by the Central Leading Group on comprehensively deepening reform, has accepted the propositions raised at the 50th biweekly consultative meeting. Another example, to address workplace injury compensation of construction workers, the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security and the Ministry of Housing and Urban Rural Development issued the opinions on providing workplace injury insurance in the construction industry. I have heard about this issue for several times since I began my work in the CPPCC. This problem has been overdue for 10 years, and it has been resolved with the facilitating efforts of the bi-weekly consultative meeting. Thank you.
西区的第一排第二位的记者提问。
谢谢主持人，我是中国网的记者。我们关心一个问题啊，习近平主席在联合国日内瓦总部的演讲时强调，说要维护世贸组织的规则，支持开放、透明、包容、非歧视性的多边贸易体制，构建开放型的世界经济。但是我们注意到呢，西方部分国家一直没有结束那个替代国的做法，对此我们国家应该怎么做？政协委员对此有一些什么样的看法？谢谢。
China.com.cn President Xi Jinping said in his speech at the UN headquarters in Geneva that we must uphold WTO rules, support an open, transparent, inclusive, and non-discriminatory multilateral trading system, and build an open world economy. While some Western countries refuse to end the surrogate country approach, in your view, what should China do in response?
There is a saying in the commentary of Zuo, an ancient Chinese narrative history, integrity is a treasure of a country. Marcus Cicero, the famous jurist in ancient Rome, also said, "What is dignity without honesty?" Integrity has always been the foundation for the healthy and orderly development of the human society wherever we are. It is a basic principle of the international law that treaty obligations must be honored. According to Article 15 of the Protocol on China's accession to WTO, WTO members need to end the surrogate country approach in anti-dumping investigations against China on December 11, 2016. To end the surrogate country approach as scheduled is an international treaty obligation that must be honored. There should be no doubt about it. No country should attempt to escape their obligations. All countries and the international judicial institutions have the responsibility to uphold the authority of the international rule of law and ensure the equal and universal application of international law. There should be no double standards. And it is not right to advocate compliance with the law only when it serves their interests and ignore it when it doesn't. China's competent departments have stated clearly that most WTO members have committed to abandoning the surrogate country approach and honoring their obligations pursuant to Article 15 as scheduled. China appreciates that. At the same time, China is unhappy about the dubious statements and actions of a few countries to shirk their responsibilities. CPPCC members fully support the government's efforts in filing a lawsuit under the WTO's framework to defend our national interests. Thank you.
第二位这位男士。
谢谢主持人，发言人好，我是上海东方卫视看看新闻 K News 记者，我的问题与新医改有关。2016年被看作是新医改的攻坚之年。 在公立医院改革等重要任务方面，确实取得了不少成绩，但是也有观点认为民众的满意度似乎没能得到同步的提升。据了解，去年全国政协在全国范围内也特意的进行过专题的调研，召开过专题协商会。我们想请问发言人，今年我们在对进一步深化新医改方面会有哪些重点工作亟待落实和推进？谢谢。
With Shanghai Media Group. The year 2016 is seen as a crucial year for China's medical reform. Progress was made in some key areas like deepening public hospital reform. However, some say that people are not happier apparently. Last year, the CPPCC National Committee conducted research and discussions on this topic. Going forward, what else will be done to help deepen medical reform?
Well, your question reminds me of the recent reform measures concerning the salary of medical practitioners and the production, circulation, and use of pharmaceuticals. These documents address specific questions, but they reflect that healthcare reform is a systematic project that involves many daunting tasks. Last year, the CPPCC National Committee included deepening healthcare reform in its list of key consultation topics. Members went to hospitals and community medical institutions in 8 provinces and cities. They conducted thorough studies on pharmaceutical prices and overuse, payment of medical insurance payout, and on many other topics. They have made good suggestions that have been positively responded by the relevant ministries. According to the outline of Healthy China 2030 plan that was adopted last year, health will be taken as a priority issue. Healthcare service will shift its focus from treating diseases to promoting health for all our people. That is to say, a healthy way of living will be encouraged to reduce disease occurrences, and early diagnosis, early treatment, and recovery will be enhanced. I believe this has provided us a roadmap to address the root causes of those healthcare problems we face. But surely, we still need to do much more to tackle those problems. Healthcare reform involves many tough challenges. The CPPCC National Committee will keep to its problem-oriented approach, concentrate on important questions, and contribute good and concrete suggestions by conducting more studies and deliberations. Thank you.
好，请中区的第4排的中间这位记者提问。
谢谢主持人。发言人您好，我是农民日报中国农业新闻网的记者。我的问题呢是有关农民收入问题的。2016年我国农民人均可支配收入这个增速呢是6.2%。较往年增速呢比较这个放缓了，是2006年以来最低的。那么，请问发言人，在这次大会上，全国政协委员对确保农民增收势头不逆转有什么样的建议？谢谢。
With Farmers Daily, I have a question about farmers' incomes. In 2016, the per capita disposable income of rural residents grew by 6.2% in real terms, lower than previous years, and actually the lowest since 2006. What advice do you have to sustain the momentum of growth for farmers' incomes? Thank you.
The CPPCC members pay high attention to this issue. During the session, we have a thematic consultative meeting on raising farmers' income. Sustaining the upward momentum of farmers' income is very important. This year's central government #1 document specified 3 bottom lines, and one of them is raising farmers' income steadily. There are multiple reasons behind the slowdown in farmers' income. They include low prices of some agricultural commodities, limited income rise for migrant workers, and slowdown in the growth of pro-agriculture subsidies. At the CPPCC's meeting on macroeconomy last July, some members called for attention on the signs of slowdown of farmers' income rise and gave the following suggestions: deepen reform of grain price formation mechanism and grain purchase and storage system, and further improve agriculture subsidy system, energize agriculture processing, promote local processing and commercialization of agricultural products, and increase their added value, create an enabling environment for business startup and job creation in rural areas, develop new industries and business models, integrate primary, secondary, and tertiary industries, encourage online sale of agricultural products, and develop new channels to raise farmers' income. We should also deepen household registration system reform, increase the share of urban residents, and better link that with increasing land for urban construction and transfer of payment. We also need to improve agricultural production conditions, cultivate contiguous and concentrated farmland wherever possible, cultivate land that can deliver stable and high yield, lower cost, and increase efficiency to raise farmers' income. The #1 document made it clear that the main goal of agriculture supply-side structural reform is to get farmers richer. I believe as long as the various policy measures in the #1 document are truly implemented, then whether it's the small target of raising each farmer's income or the grand objective of rural and agriculture development, we are optimistic of the prospects. CPPCC members will continue to pay high attention to issues related to farmers, agriculture, and rural area, and actively assess agriculture supply-side structural reform and contribute ideas and suggestions. Thank you.
那请中区第3排那位穿黄衣服的举手的女士。
谢谢主持人，发言人您好，我是团结报、团结网、团结一家客户端记者。我的问题跟政协监督有关。我们知道，中共18届六中全会修订通过了《中国共产党党内监督条例》，公报中提到，人民政协依章程进行民主监督。 我的问题是，人民政协具体如何履行这一监督职能？谢谢。
Unity News. I want to ask about supervision by the CPPCC. The 6th plenum of the 18th CPC Central Committee adopted the revised regulations on intra-party supervision. The communique of the meeting noted that the CPPCC exercises democratic supervision in accordance with its charter. Could you please tell us in detail how the CPPCC fulfills the duty of supervision?
The democratic supervision by the CPPCC is an important part of China's socialist supervision system and an important form of socialist consultative democracy. The 6th plenum of the 18th CPC Central Committee called upon the CPPCC to exercise democratic supervision in accordance with the Charter, which demonstrates the CPC Central Committee's high attention on CPPCC's democratic supervision. Democratic supervision by the CPPCC is different from CPC's intra-party supervision. It's also different from supervision by the law. It is consultative and not based on power. Through the CPPCC platform, members can have consultative meetings, inspection trips, research, and put forward proposals, make interventions, and reflect public opinions to raise their views, criticism, and suggestions, and exercise supervision over government agencies and public servants. Last year, the National Committee organized 18 major oversight activities, and the local committees also carried out various kinds of supervision and move forward democratic supervision and oversight. Let me give you an example. Last September, an inspection team by the CPPCC National Committee carried out democratic supervision under the theme, the development of time-honored brands in China. Why this theme? And when you talk about time-honored brands, you think of daily necessities such as salt or vinegar. They may seem trivial, but they concern the practical interests of ordinary people. And actually, some time-honored brands face many acute difficulties and challenges today. The members visited dozens of such companies and came up with many insights. For instance, the value of time-honored brands lies in its long history, but the way forward lies in innovation. Time-honored brands should not rest on their past glory and should once again pursue workmanship. These are all suggestions to those time-honored brand companies. The Ministry of Commerce and 15 other government agencies, on the basis of the members' report, drafted guiding opinions on promoting reform and innovation of time-honored brands, and many such companies are highly appreciative of such suggestions and oversight activities by the CPPCC. This year, the CPPCC will earnestly carry out democratic supervision as called upon by the CPC Central Committee and further enhance the ability and performance in doing so. We will be bold and diligent in doing this work. Thank you.
咱们下面是最后一个问题。请咱们中间中区第3排第2位记者提问。
谢谢主持人。发言人您好，中国新闻社记者提问：2016年中央经济工作会议提出，混合所有制是国企改革的重要突破口。那么，请问全国政协委员对于混合所有制问题的推进有何看法？谢谢。
With China News Service, it was noted at the Central Economic Work Conference that mixed ownership is a major aspect for the reform of state-owned enterprises. What is your view on the ownership reform? Thank you.
谢谢你，这个是一个很好的问题。
Thank you for
舆
your
论现在对国企
question.
混改问题很关注。
The reform of state-owned enterprises towards mixed ownership has been in the spotlight, with many discussions and comments. Some believe that the progress of the reform is a little bit slow,
听到不少声音也说，这个国有资本跟非国有资
while
本
many others believe
就像年轻人谈
that
情
the
说爱
fusion of state-owned and non-state-owned capital is just like young people falling in love and getting married. The speed of progress is not
评判标准
the
绝对的评判标准
criterion or a sole criterion.
必须两情相悦
Mutual consent
你情我
and
愿
affection
互利
is a
双
must
赢最终才能
if
幸福
win-win results and happiness are to be
所以
guaranteed.
国企混改一方面要防止
In carrying out SOE reform towards mixed ownership, it is necessary to prevent loss of state-owned assets and ensure that its value is inflation-proof and appreciating, and at the same time protect the rights and interests of non-state-owned capital investors. For private enterprises, if the industry they have access to is not attractive and profitable, and if their voice and interests cannot be guaranteed when they hold shares, they will naturally have little interest in the reform. The policy from the central leadership is very clear. The reform should be conducted only when conditions are ready and must be done in a steady way. The reform towards mixed ownership is not for the sake of mixing. There should be no forced mixing, nor does the government pursue 100% coverage or a deadline for the reform. There should be a tailor-made plan of reform for each enterprise, which will be carried out only when conditions are ready. According to the information from relevant departments, since 2015, the reform has been steadily unfolding. As planned by the State Council, pilot programs have been rolled out in enterprises or projects in such key areas as power, oil, natural gas, railway, civil aviation, telecommunications, and military. The task assignments for 2015 and 2016 were completed on time, and the work for 2017 implementing is being done in a steady and orderly way, without any signs of progressing too slowly. Among members of the CPPCC National Committee are personages from SOEs and private enterprises, as well as experts and scholars, who are very representative and professional. They have a keen interest in this issue. I believe they will follow this issue closely, conduct in-depth study, and make full use of the CPPCC as the platform of consultative communication to contribute to the SOE reform towards mixed ownership. Thank you. This is the end of this conference. Thank you.